I know they asked like 5 or 10 other people before so thank you so much for that. So tonight for our second Takeout Tuesday event, we delve into another heated topic. Why does the United States fail at worker training? Before we begin, we wanted to take a few announcements and tell you about the ground rules. Tonight, we're talking about a topic we don't necessarily agree on. To keep the conversation civil and informative, I'd like to caution you against what we call, quote-unquote, team clapping. When you clap, when your side says something you agree with, maybe give a little groan when you disagree. Rather, we'd like you to do neither. Tonight, we'd like to challenge you to work hard and listen to both sides of the story. Just in case you need a reminder, we have our civility bell, which is in the hands of Kelly Alvarez Vitale, President of Strategic Philanthropy. We've asked her to be particularly sensitive to either side of the aisle and ring the bell if she hears demonizing. Kelly, please ring the bell to give an example. A portion of the evening will be Q&A. There's a podium and mic in the back of the room if you would like to ask a question. Please be conscious of your time when asking questions, unlike myself, who likes to give statements and comments. We want to get in as many questions as possible. Lastly, I have the pleasure of welcoming our guest panelist and moderator for this evening. Please help me in welcoming our panelist, Sean Smith, Director of Development for the Marine Industry Association of South Florida. Sean has graciously filled the spot of Carol Bowen, a good friend of mine, of the Associated Builders and Contractors of Florida, who unfortunately is ill tonight. Next, we have another good friend of mine, Dr. Mildred Cohen, Executive Director of Career and Workforce Education and Economic Development here at Broward College. So here's another unique opportunity. My former boss, Commissioner Chip Lamarca, introduced me. I get to introduce one of my former bosses, President and CEO of CareerSource Broward, and Janet Wimco, Senior Vice President of Human Resources at City Furniture. Mason Jackson, I'm sorry. President and CEO of CareerSource Broward, or as when I worked there, Workforce One. And Janet Winco, Senior Vice President of Human Resources at City Furniture. Our moderator for this evening is President David Armstrong with Broward College. We are extremely fortunate to have them here this evening and encourage you to read their bios in your program book, as these are some incredible individuals. This is so special for me, so take a picture. Now on to our programming. Before we begin our debate, we are going to watch a short video. Again, thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoy your evening.
Larimer County, Colorado needs people. At 2.3%, Colorado has the country's lowest unemployment rate. At the Larimer County Workforce Center, a shift in focus.
We are certainly still helping people find positions, but a lot of the external pressures that are on us are towards helping employers find skilled workers.
This northern Colorado area added 20,000 jobs in the past 5 years, but only 11,000 people. Local employers will have another 28,000 openings to fill over the next 5 years. It's a story playing out nationwide, with unemployment now at 4.3%. The rate of increase in job openings far outpacing the increase in actual hires. Many employers point to a skills gap in the labor force, a mismatch between the jobs they're trying to fill and the workers needed to fill them.
But about 95% of hiring is to hire people who are experienced. And so what they're after are people with quite specific skills.
But critics of the skills gap idea point the finger at employers. They argue with unemployment so low, companies should feel pressure to boost wages. Instead, what we've seen since the last recession ended in 2009 is stagnating wage growth.
Employers are reluctant to raise wages. We understand why. But as the economy tightens, it gets more and more difficult to hire people.
We're here today to celebrate the dignity of work.
Earlier this month, President Trump signed an executive order expanding federal funding for apprenticeship programs. In northern Colorado, the help can't come soon enough.
Almost every employer that we speak to is having trouble finding the skilled candidates that they need.
And employers may have to start digging deeper into their own pockets to get the resource they need most: people. Stephanie Rule, NBC News, New York.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out.
Okay, well, welcome to Broward College and welcome to Village Square to discuss a very important topic. We're thrilled to have all of you here today. Is this microphone working, or can you hear me okay regardless one way or the other? I can't tell if it's working or not. We're going to throw up a few slides from a slide presentation that many of you have seen because it was used recently, Kareem, with our friends from the Florida Chamber at your Broward Workshop event last week. Just to illustrate some of the issues data-wise that we're talking about. Kelly, am I operating this, or thank goodness you're operating this. And so just a few data points that our panelists all have seen and know about, and some of you are probably aware of. This is one of the slides, and I'll point you can't see all of the data on here, but I'll point you, this is Florida data, by the way, statewide data. The two numbers down on the lower right-hand corner. Close to 400,000 people in the state of Florida right now are looking for jobs, unemployed, looking for jobs. And a little more than half of that number, 260,000 jobs that are open that are looking for qualified people to fill them. So that illustrates at the statewide level what the gap is that we're talking about. We have people who are unemployed looking for jobs, and we have jobs looking for people. Similarly, in Broward County, on the lower left-hand number, those two numbers, and Mason, I don't know if this is current. Actually, I see the data on there. It's supposedly really recently. 312, that's your data, or Florida's data. Right. So 40,000 people basically in Broward County looking for jobs, and 20,000 people, half that number, are jobs seeking qualified people. So this is, in essence, the topic that we're talking about now. How do we better align quality, trained workforce, talent that can enter into hopefully good jobs? And how can we get those people who are unemployed and seeking employment and want to be employed, how can we get them prepared and ready and into a good job? This is one of the issues that affects the fact that we're, I think, probably from a demographic point of view in this country overall, as we've seen Europe addressing this or dealing with some of the similar issues demographically over the same number of years. We have a lot of people like myself who are in the baby boomer generation and are moving towards or into rapidly a new category of unemployment of sorts, although I don't plan to be really unemployed, but we're moving out of current positions because we're baby boomers and we're reaching retirement age, right? So a big portion of us are moving out of the workforce. And for the most case, a lot of the same jobs are still there. And so that's contributing to the gap. This shows age brackets, if you can see it. The one that is the longest bar there is 45 to 54. I think this is Florida data once again. Mildred, is that right?
Yes, it is.
We decided that? Yeah, so Broward County may be a little bit different from this. I honestly don't know. It might be a little bit older than this. I don't know. But then the category in the green right below that are people who are getting very close to retirement. And you see the people up at the top end of this, what in essence would look like a bell curve if we spread it out or formatted it in a different way. There are a lot less people in younger categories who are going to be coming behind those big long bars as they get ready to retire, right? Unless something changes demographically, like in migration. And obviously we have that coming in from other states here in the United States with people continuing to move here to Florida. So hopefully more talent is moving here, but not always. We know that a big part of our population, Mason and others, you all know, are retirees who are coming here to enjoy our beaches, and so they're not necessarily looking for work. They're looking for quality of life, and they're looking for low cost of living and those sorts of things. So they're not necessarily going to help us with our gap in the skills gap and the jobs gap. So just a couple of illustrations of what we here at Broward College and other state college systems, as well as our technical centers. I don't know if anybody's here from our technical schools, but they help with a number of the same kind of things. We have associate in science degrees here at Broward College. We've just illustrated some of the hot jobs that are here in our community and where we've we have offered programs at various levels. So in registered nurse, everybody knows that there are great careers and unbelievable openings at our hospitals. You can earn $63,000 a year as a registered nurse after 2 years at Broward College. Software developers, computer systems administrator, insurance agent, risk management, physical therapy tech, and other various business administration supervisory jobs, all are viable careers with 2-year degrees. Then for shorter term, and this is one of the things Mason and Mildred and lots of us have been really focusing on the next slide, I think, Kelly, is technical certificates. So our wonderful technical colleges here in the community that the school district operates offers a number of these programs, as do we here at the college. So these are typically 1-year programs in length, and you can still get a very, very good job in healthcare and business-related areas. But guess what? How many parents are talking to their children about these kind of jobs? Not a whole lot. And frankly, not a whole lot of our children in schools even know about some of these kind of career opportunities, and that there's very good pay and very good opportunities. So this is another one of the problems that we have. Everybody wants their child, when they start off, everybody's going to be a doctor or a lawyer still, apparently, and they're all going to Harvard or the University of Florida or somewhere, right? Well, that's not really the way the world works, and increasingly with a lot of things that are changing in our business environment, more and more things are changing. So, education training level through 2021, these are the projections. A little over 50% of them are in what we call middle skill levels. They would require what I just showed you in the technical certificates or in the 2-year associate degree level. They need more than high school diploma. They've got to have some kind of technical skill training, and that's where the technical centers and state colleges like Broward College offer. Only about 21%, and I guess that number will continue to probably go down, requires a high school or less. Those are the jobs, of course, that are, especially in South Florida, where we have a high cost of living, expensive transportation and housing options. It's going to be difficult for people to stay in those low-skill jobs in many cases and be able to provide adequately with any kind of quality of life for themselves and their families. And then in the high skill areas, typically these are 4-year degrees or more, although in some areas like IT, it's not as important what degree you have, it's what skills you have. And so increasingly, even at Broward College, we're offering options there. So that's an overview of some of the issues that we're facing, and we're going to dive right in and talk to our panelists because they are the true experts on this. I've got a series of questions that I'll throw out to all of them, and they can answer from their various experience, from Mildred as an educator, Mason as the expert, and all things helping our citizens find meaningful careers and job opportunities. And Mason, you've been doing that for a long time, so you've seen a lot of changes in this area. We look forward to hearing from you. And then we're really fortunate to have employers or people who work in business and industry and are dealing with the shortages and the gaps that we've got. So I think we've got a wonderful panel to have this conversation. So let me just start off by asking each of our panelists to address the big high-level issues that we just threw out there, and ask them what they see as the biggest challenges for us here in Broward County in particular, to creating and closing the skills, creating a talent pipeline and closing the skills gap for our employers here in Broward County. Mason, let me ask you to kick it off for us here.
Well, thank you, President Armstrong, and He described me as an expert, and whenever somebody says I'm an expert, I always think about the derivation of that word. If you divide it in two, X means from, and a spurt is a drip under pressure. So, and I think he was just being kind by saying that I've been in it a long time. I think that was a nice way of saying I'm old. But I've been through every recession since since '76, so that gives you some idea. You know, I want to address the overall question, because the title of this is, you know, why has the workforce development system failed in the U.S.? And I want to say, first, it hasn't. Okay, it hasn't failed at all. We have among the most productive workers in the world. In fact, the International Monetary Fund and the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's most of the Western industrialized nations, count us as 6th in productivity in the world. We're ahead of China, we're ahead of Korea, which has the most educated folks. Something like 46% of American workers have some training beyond secondary school. The reason that companies are reshoring, and you may have heard that phenomenon, offshoring was a big problem there for a while. Manufacturing was moving offshore. But lately they're coming back. And you know why they're coming back? 2 reasons. Number one, the quality of the vendor products that they're getting overseas isn't up to standard. But the second and the biggest reason is the quality of the American workforce. So, you know, with 3.8% unemployment, you're talking about full employment. Most economists say 4% is full employment, because at any one time, 4% of the people will be in transition. So even though you've got job openings and you've got people looking for jobs, it doesn't mean there's necessarily a skills gap. It means people are in transition. And when we look underneath the unemployment figures, we see that a lot of those folks that are unemployed are unemployed by choice. They're job leavers, and they're doing that because they have the confidence that they can get another job fairly quickly. So, first of all, it really hasn't failed. In Broward County, you've got one of the best school districts in the country, always ranked in the top 10. Career and technical education here issues more industry certifications than any other organization in the state of its type. We have among the best high schools, according to U.S. News and World Report. And the Aspen Institute constantly ranks Broward College as in the top 1, 2, and 3 of all community colleges in the country. I mean, you've got a lot to be proud of the educational institutions and the organizations who are turning out your most important asset, and that's your workforce here. However, that doesn't mean we don't have some ways to go. When you see 3.8% unemployment, it's not 3.8% for everybody, okay? If you're a white male with an advanced degree, your unemployment rate's probably around 2.3%. If you're a minority male between the ages of 19 and 24, your unemployment rate can be 5 times the average rate there. So when you're looking at the unemployment rate as a line, it's not horizontal. It's tilted like this with the midpoint. That's the average. So can we be doing better? Absolutely. With minorities, with disaffected youth, those who are termed NEETs, not employed or in education and training. The undereducated, the poor, people with disabilities, ex-offenders, those are all groups that we can do a better job with. And I think I'll stop right there and let somebody else talk.
Good. Janet, let's go to you as one of the biggest employers and City Furniture here, not only in our community, but all over the state of Florida, and many other brands I know that you all increasingly have. What are some of the biggest issues that you all have? And feel free, if not now, at some point, you're in one of those industries that is really being challenged by competitors. Everybody in business is these days, whether you're a taxi cab driver, but with Amazon and others out there. So your business is constantly looking for top talent that knows how to have good customer service and all of that. What are some of the big challenges that you guys are dealing with?
So like everybody, we are facing a challenge when it comes to hiring. We face the quantity of applicants and candidates, the quality of candidates available. Some positions are easier to fill than others, but we struggle with very skilled positions like a mechanic or repair technicians. So we've had to really develop our own, apprenticeship programs and training programs and things like that to try to overcome some challenges. The general bigger challenges that we face when trying to recruit are everything ranging from compensation levels, the cost of living, when you put it all together, and how much we can afford to pay our associates, and what's the market rate for those particular positions, and what's the cost of living, and how about transportation. Our corporate office and distribution center, which houses 1,000 of our associates, is out in Tamarack, right on the cusp of the Sawgrass Expressway, and the transportation's an issue, buses and things like that. And then we just have our general day-to-day challenges of running the business, the things that you mentioned, the competition, a Wayfair, with a $2.99 sofa. How do you compete with that? And those are issues that we're facing. The internet, we have to win on the web. We say that all the time. But it's tough when you have Amazon with Prime and so forth. So a lot of big challenges, a lot of challenges that probably many other employers are facing. But they really do, quite honestly, kind of start with that very basic of, compensation, and how do the associates get to work, and while they're there, the benefits that we offer, health insurance, very expensive, those types of things. So we have some big challenges that we're tackling.
I think most of you in this crowd certainly have heard about the Alice report that has indicated, and along with some similar things, that we face a huge challenge here in South Florida. We are, in essence, the cost, when you look at the gap between the cost of living and the overall earnings on average in our community, we have the biggest gap in the nation. So while it might not make intuitive sense to some of you, because you say, well, there are lots of places like San Francisco and Silicon Valley who have a lot bigger earnings, right? High salaries and all that. But we have one of the highest cost of living when you combine things like transportation and housing and other issues. So that is one of the challenges that certainly all of our businesses deal with when it comes to compensation at entry-level positions and those kinds of things. So, Sean, I know the marine industry is, without doubt, one of the largest wonderful industries here in our community, from manufacturing, repair, and service, and everything else. I can't go to any grocery store downtown without seeing people off the yachts who are loading up these, 4 and 5 wagons of food to load up the yachts. Tell us about the specific kind of and unique kind of talent challenges that you all deal with, and how you personally have been trying to help address that.
Sure. Like a lot of the other industries, we have a trade skill problem. Construction, aviation, automotive, they're faced with similar challenges. We need for lack of a better term, the wrench turners, the people that are willing to work with their hands. Mechanics, plumbers, electricians. It's an issue because a challenge that we face is raising awareness. I'll go speak to a room full of students, middle school, high school, and marine industry is an $8.8 billion a year industry just in Broward County. Wages are 28% higher in our industry compared to the state average, 136,000 jobs. And I go talk to a room full of students and ask them who knows about the marine industry. Maybe 3 or 4 raise their hands. Whose parents work in the industry? It's the same 3 or 4 kids. So as an industry, we're not communicating outside of ourselves. And it's a challenge is overcoming the perception. The idea of the trade skill guy as the plumber with his butt crack hanging out, or the greasy mechanic, it's not something parents want their kids to be. It's not something that says, oh, you're gonna go be that plumber and you're gonna have a great career. But in reality, I know plumbers making over $100,000 a year. I mean, easy. They're in super high demand. They can pick which business they want to go to because, and they can create a bidding war in the process. It's just changing that perception and letting kids understand that, hey, with a 2-year degree, going to a trade school, going to one of the great schools we have here in Broward County, you can get a certification, you can get a trade skill, and you can make a great living for yourself that doesn't require a 4-year degree. And so something I've been doing, is a series called Salty Jobs. Similar to Dirty Jobs with Mike Rowe. I work a day in different marine businesses, We understand the ADD generation, so we keep the videos short. They're about 4 minutes long. And I work a day in the shoes of different trade skills. I was filming yesterday doing interior design on yachts over at Marine Max. I've done an episode as a towboat captain, as a diesel mechanic, as a running gear mechanic, propeller technician. And the idea is to show students what you'd be doing in these careers, and what training is required. We have little strategic pop-ups that say these schools in Broward can provide X, Y, Z, and what the kids all like to hear, how much money you can make. And when they see, oh wow, you mean 3 years removed from school I could be making $40,000, $50,000 a year without a university degree, they start to perk up, and I think come and ask me questions after I speak to them.
Great, that's a great illustration. I've got a little factoid here. There's in advanced manufacturing, something that we're trying to help with, and there's a huge industry here in manufacturing that very few people know about because it's not a retail brand, but there are, goodness knows how many employers, Mason probably knows, but very strong industry. And they may have 50 employees, they may have 300 employees, and you've never heard of them, but they manufacture pumps and all the things that go into a yacht, and tremendous jobs. And so advanced manufacturing, the Manhattan Institute recently surveyed Americans, and 88% of U.S. manufacturers responded to the survey said they had difficulty finding skilled workers. So 88% of manufacturers looking for skilled workers. Then 90% of Americans rate manufacturing as important or very important for America's economic prosperity and standard of living, and yet, Sean, to your point, which has already come up a couple of times, and Mildred's going to clean this up here for us, only 35% of Americans who were surveyed said that they would encourage their children to pursue careers in manufacturing despite the advanced skills and above average pay that are characteristic of the sector. Because unfortunately, many Americans still think of manufacturing as, the old manufacturing jobs that are dirty and no fun and maybe no good pay, and they just have a complete disconnect about what manufacturing means today. So having people like Sean who go out into the schools early on and try to have those conversations about the great career opportunities that are out there is one way to go about doing this. It also illustrates the point that, as the video that we started off with indicated, there are a lot of people who just point fingers at other people that it's their job, right? So employers are constantly coming to Mason and me and anybody in training and education and saying, I need more trained workers. And it is an issue for all of us to deal with, and certainly education plays an important role in that. So Mildred, talk to us about some of the high-level issues that we're dealing with in education, both at Broward College, but also our technical centers and at all levels.
Sure. Well, the skills gap truly is a supply-demand issue. But when you have a problem like that, you have to look at the problem on both sides, the problem and the solution on both sides. So when we look at the supply and we're looking at our talent that we're growing, we have to recognize that our young people aren't necessarily growing up getting exposed to all the great careers that are available in your businesses out there. So they're growing up knowing what they're a consumer of. So they know education, so they know all about jobs such as teachers, assistant principals, counselors. They know maybe about some healthcare occupations. So we have, in Broward College, we have about 7,000 students annually that come here looking to be in some health science occupation, mostly nursing. But those are just the limited opportunities that they have been exposed to. They don't know the great jobs that Sean is talking about in the marine industry, because we're not growing up children and our community to understand that you can have really great, viable careers that don't necessarily have to have a bachelor's degree. But we have to, as a society, recognize that those career opportunities are available and continue, all of us, each one of us, to understand what the new economy looks like for our young people and our students that are our talent pipeline, and being able to challenge those myths about the workplace. So one number that I like to use is 1:7. It's a ratio. It's an education to jobs ratio. For every one job that requires a master's degree, there's 2 that require a bachelor's degree, and there's 7 jobs that require a technical skill or an associate's degree. So we've been focusing our society and our education on the 1 and the 2 for the longest time, but we have to recognize that we're creating
we've created our own supply issue, because the measure of success has been based on a university for all mentality. And we're not saying, believe me, we're in education, we all have all sorts of degrees, but it's about what is the degree that's going to add the most value to a person's life and give them that sense of purpose and connectivity to society and to a job and work that they're going to be able to add value and contribute. The demand side of it is also a challenge. So the demand side, if you look at the employer side, we also have to identify what the problem is and what the solutions are. And employers have to recognize that if they decide that they're just going to turn over their biggest workforce, their biggest company risk, which is their workforce, just leave it up to chance that at the end of 4 years or 6 years, when someone graduates, they're going to have the skills that they need. They're really not having a very smart strategic plan. I mean, City Furniture certainly doesn't do that. You recruit all over the state. You do your summer internship program. You're working with us on building a part-time sales force. But it has to be that the employers recognize that they need to partner with our education institutions and identify strategies to be able to build that workforce or that talent pipeline so that they're not just waiting. I mean, with the changes in technology evolving every 12 to 18 months, if you wait 4 years for an IT student to graduate, that student's skills may be completely obsolete from what you needed at the time that they started. So we need to constantly be in the state of renewal and collaboration between our employer and our education partners to make sure that we're communicating the right message to our young people and our students entering, as well as our parents and our families and the communities as to what success can look like, and to our employer partners that there might be a time where you have to look at your job descriptions that you're having a hard time finding someone for and say, maybe we need to revisit what the talent is that we really need if we're struggling so hard to find that talent. Maybe we need to revisit what are the education requirements, what are the technical skills and the work experience required, and can we get through some of those development years by offering an internship, an apprenticeship, where we're growing that skill base within the workforce talent supply that they're trying to cultivate. So
good. Mason, go ahead.
Somebody asked me the other day, if you had one wish, what would it be? And I presumed it would be to double your funding. And I said, no, not really. I said, if I had one wish, it would be that employers would look at their talent workforce or talent base a little differently. Instead of looking at it as a cost center to be minimized, they would realize that their talent base is the only appreciating asset they have. Think about it. When is your employee the least valuable to you? The very first day of work, right? Because on the second day of work, they know some things they didn't know on the first day. And so it goes. So if they could change their perception and begin to see that as the only appreciating asset that they had, they would begin to look at their entire vendor supply chain differently, starting with early learning. They would look at quality childcare. They would look at the K-12 system differently as a vendor of their most important asset, and they would look at the post-secondary system entirely differently than they do right now.
Good point, Mason. So what are we talking about? Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Just wanted to add something really quick. We talked a lot about the perception of parents and just in general the perception of some of the trade positions. I actually think it's interesting, and some may be surprised when we go on college campuses, and we're, to Mildred's point, we are all across the state of Florida, and you may be surprised at the number of students that we get pushback from their parents for talking to City Furniture. I didn't send you to school for 4 years so that you can become a manager and trainee at City Furniture. Now, rest assured, 5+ years from now, they could be running a multi-million-dollar showroom making 6 figures. Parents don't necessarily see that. They're not looking that far ahead. But it's interesting because we talk about kind of that lack of perception at the trade skill level, but what we face that every day when we're out on college campuses, and the number of phone calls that we've had to have with parents, even the helicopter parents, to say, yeah, you'd be nice. To say, listen, these are the career opportunities and this is what we can do, and you kind of paint that picture. So we face that, even in our environment as well, not at the skilled positions, but at the entry-level management positions. It's interesting, all the perceptions that exist and obstacles.
And so that perception pervades public policymakers as well. We all love our universities, and I want them to have all the support in the world, but last year the legislature gave them over $300 million in increased funding, and the University of Florida and others benefited greatly from that. We're able to hire new faculty members, reduce class size, etc. They cut the funding for state colleges by $30 million, and so we've had to increase class size. So this very gap that we're talking about, policymakers, just like you refer to parents who have a bias towards, what we have traditionally had high regard for in professions and that sort of thing, is something that we need to think about as citizens and make sure that our technical centers, our K-12 system, Superintendent Runcie and others in our K-12 system are talking about the woeful lack of funding that they got this year. Same in our system. We did get a small increase, but it wasn't enough even to make up the gap that we got cut last year. The university's got another major increase in funds. So again, not begrudging anybody getting more money, but if we're going to address these skills gaps, we've got to have policymakers who put resources into those kind of programs to address it. So when we talk about skills, we talk about technical skills, and you all address that, but there are also these things that we commonly call a variety of different things, but soft skills. And a lot of employers and a lot of parents and a lot of educators, everyone, is concerned about students who maybe don't have the same level of skills in those soft skill areas like communication skills, critical thinking, problem solving, teamwork, professionalism, etc. And I'd love to hear first from our employers, our business and industry folks, and see what you think about that. Is it more technical skills that you deal with? And this may vary by profession as well, right? It may be more important in some industries that if you got the technical skills, I don't really care as much about those other things. But if you're dealing with people, then obviously the communication skills are going to be more important. So, Sean, tell us from your perspective, are the soft skills as important? Are you dealing with that kind of issue as well as the technical skills?
Yeah, attitude and aptitude. I say it all the time. A challenge in our industry, to Mildred's point, is getting the companies to rethink the way they look at candidates, rethink their job descriptions. I use the phrase purple squirrel, and they want a candidate in their late 20s with 10 years marine experience, a bachelor's degree, and speaks 5 languages. And it's not going to happen. You're not going to find these people anymore. What the model is changing, you're going to have to look at the attitude, look at aptitude, and look at students that can be trained. We recently did a project with South Broward High School where we did an elevator pitch competition, and the students had 1 minute to sell themselves for a career in the industry. And so to prepare them for this contest, I brought in a vice principal from one of our maritime schools, and I brought in a gentleman from Toastmasters. And the gentleman from Toastmasters spoke about soft skills, spoke about selling yourself, and he said something that I stole and I use all the time. Young people, middle school, high school, even college, it's easy to say, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I'm who I am, and they'll just have to accept me. The older I get, the more I care what everybody thinks about me. I mean, right down to my waiter at Applebee's. You don't know who their mom is, who their dad is, who their sister is. The more you go through life and approach everything like a job interview, the better off you're going to be. And so that's the message I give to the middle school students, the high school students. Talk to everybody, treat everybody with respect, and if you show that willingness to learn and that ability to shake someone's hand, look them in the eye, and show up on time, that's something nobody seems to get. If you're not 5 minutes early or 10 minutes late, those things will take you a long, long way, especially in our industry.
Great. Janet, from your industry's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Soft skills are extremely important, as you can imagine. Communication skills, you talk about professionalism. We face issues. I can give you example after example. We have high turnover in our call center, and that's somewhat to be expected. But when we go back and problem solve and really are looking at the reasons for turnover in that particular area, a lot of it is attendance. Just the inability to show up for work on time. And I sit there and I think they had to show up at their classes on time. They had, why is this now an issue? And we really struggle with it. And we counteract some of it by doing a lot of soft skills training. So similar to Sean, we focus a lot on cultural fit. we do training, whether it's technical skills training or soft skills training. We're looking for good citizens. We're looking for people who can communicate well, who can show up for work on time, who are dependable, reliable. And it's just really turned out to be a big deal for us. Communication skills, customer service skills. You can imagine so many of our positions, whether you're serving the customer face-to-face in the showroom, whether you're somebody in the call center, as a customer service rep, all of our delivery drivers. We have 250 delivery drivers on the road, and we have a shortage there, and so does everybody else, Ryder and DHL, and everybody's freaking out because we have a shortage of drivers. But yet our drivers aren't just kind of driving something and dropping it off. Who's had a delivery from City Furniture? Oh, you better all raise your hand. Well, they hopefully did a little more than that. Some don't, I know. But hopefully they were approachable, and when they walked up and they introduced themselves, and they may or may not have built some rapport with you while they were there. And the very best ones do, and then they end up with bigger tips and things like that.
I said Janet Winko, and they polished my car.
I bet they did. But so my point is everybody is touching some customer, whether it's external or internal in our organization. So a big deal for us. And we do a lot of training. We can't do enough training, but we do a lot of training. And we rely, of course, on universities, the students that we're hiring and so forth to kind of supplement that and help us with that.
Well, perfect transition. Mildred, tell us about what educators are doing. And when I went to school, nobody taught me soft skills. My mama and grandmama taught me.
Mm-hmm, right.
Or you learned it by going to work early on in jobs when you were teenagers. And so something has changed in the long arc of my lifetime. I think in general, this obviously is different from family to family and community to community and whatever, but educators are being asked to, and we are trying to address this more and more. And then we'll come to Mason, because I know he's been very involved in this conversation as well.
Well, soft skills aren't something that you can just fix in a workshop. If somebody's had a lifetime or 18, 24 years, or whatever it is, of having their nose in the phone or not being able to make eye contact to have a conversation or shake hands and understand what that all means and the value of being on time. So what we've done at the college is we have built into each of our programs, each of our 2-year associate science degree programs, as outcomes for that 2-year degree, those competencies that we think that we've talked to employers that they value: communication, teamwork, problem solving, critical thinking, and professionalism, and finding opportunities along the way within those courses that the students take, whether they're building their skills or whether they're developing their general education aptitude. We're making sure that we're documenting that they can master those competencies. And on another note, we're also working very closely with the community, and Mason and I chair a soft skills consortium. And Mason, I'll let you chat about that.
Well, some years ago, we got together a group of industry leaders in 6 different industries around the issue of skills gap, and we invited the educators to the table and everything. And we basically said, we're reading a lot about skills gap. The economists say there is no skills gap, and yet we keep hearing from you all that there is. Here are your educators. Here are the people turning out your most valuable commodity, your talent base. If there's a skills gap, tell them what it is, okay? And whether it was aviation, avionics, to manufacturing, to construction, to automotive, to life sciences, we heard over and over again the soft skills. Every study that's been done recently in the last 3 or 4 years on the skills gap mentions soft skills 2 to 1 over hard skills, and many times those hard skills or occupational skills are system-specific skills that would be very difficult to train anybody on. So a lot of the talk about skills gap is about the soft skills. We had a construction GC say, we can't find finished carpenters. And we went, oh, thank goodness, something we could train in, And about 20 minutes later, he came back and he said, you know what, I take it back. It's not that we can't find finished carpenters. I can't keep the ones I find. They don't come in on Friday, they show up late on Monday, they don't have a sense of craftsmanship, they don't know how to talk to customers, and so forth. I can only keep about 1 out of every 10. 10 have the hard skills. They've got the ability to do it. What they're lacking is something that we call job retention and advancement skills. They don't know how to do it. So how do we teach those skills? Well, that's a problem. I mean, how do we teach it? As President Armstrong said, many of us learned it at home, but many of us learned it on our first jobs. And that's one of the things I would encourage the employer community to do out there, is to give these young people jobs during the summer, or even internships during the school year. Bring them into your business and monitor what they're doing. Teach them in the ways that you want to see, so that you're shaping the future workforce. That's not happening anymore. It's happening for a lot of reasons. There's no one single reason. Baby boomers like myself are staying in the workforce longer. We're taking those jobs. I mean, when was the last time your groceries were bagged by a teenager, or your dogs were walked by a teenager, or a teenager washed your car, right? Or even delivered your newspapers. Adults take all those jobs, okay? And the jobs in many cases have higher skills than the young people have, at least initially, unless it's IT, and then they can do it just fine. So if you're concerned about the workforce, if you're going to be in business 5 years from now, okay, your workforce of tomorrow is over in the schools today. Go over there, and as Alexander Pope said, as the twig is bent, so grows the tree. Help shape the tree.
That's a great transition to my next question. Thank you, Mason. And to go back to our industry partners here, you both are doing a variety of different things to both recruit and attract, but also to retain and develop your talent in your workplaces. And Sean, you talked about going into the schools. What do you see that's working, at least, or some hope, or things maybe you've heard about? What other solutions have you seen from, let's say, the education and workforce sectors, to the extent that you're interacting with them, in addition to what you're doing personally, and I guess others in certain industries, to go in and directly educate and try to make students and families and parents, and let's face it, teachers and counselors and others who don't know about these options as well in our middle schools and high schools, right? What other good solutions or options do you see?
Sure, and to touch on the last part of what you just said, something we've been doing is educating teachers and counselors and the parents. They can't tell the kids, they can't take a student who's not doing well and say, oh, try a trade skill, if they don't know the options are out there. I mean, I do the same speeches to the teachers, and they don't know about our industry either. So something we've done the last year or so is we do field trips for teachers, field trips for brace advisors. We took 100 faculty members to a yard, gave them a panel discussion, and showed them some of the jobs. And a cool story that came from that trip was one of the students came out and was talking to his old teachers, and they talked for a good 10, 15 minutes. Student went away, and teacher came to me and said, is he doing well with his employer? And I went and checked, and yeah, he'd been promoted 2 times in the year and a half he'd been there. She said, wow, this was a trouble child. This was somebody who sat in the back of class, didn't pay attention, 60s on his test, DC student, barely graduated, and he's thriving in the industry. And it's the American model education doesn't always benefit everybody in the room. Some people can't keep up, they fall behind, but they can take your car engine apart with their bare hands. And so it's how to identify these students and how to point them in the direction of a better option or something that fits their skill set. And so by giving the teachers these tools, giving advisors these tools, giving parents these tools, hopefully we can identify these candidates at a younger age and start training them in something that can be a career.
Great. And Janet, what else do you see working inside of City Furniture, the MAT? How many employees do you guys have?
We have 1,475 employees. We have 90 open requisitions right now. So if you don't have anybody looking, send your jobs to
So you're
cityworks.com.
constantly recruiting for new employees to fill those vacant positions, and as you grow stores and all that. But more importantly, I'm sure, just like for our students, the most important students to us are not the ones we're trying to find for next year, they're the ones we have right now. So trying to retain them and help keep them, right? So what do you do to help with those issues?
Yeah, we have, I could spend all day talking about all of our different retention and engagement strategies that we have. We focus a lot on satisfaction, engagement, and we do surveys every year, obviously. So we really look at, and we do feedback sessions, kind of town halls, where we say to people, what if you could change one thing about City Furniture, what would you change? And we literally just, it's for us, we say, okay, compensation issue, let's look at that. Work schedules are an issue, let's look at that. Work-life balance, let's look at that. So we focus a lot on different things that we can do to retain our associates. We partner with, organizations like Broward College, with, Art Broward. We do all sorts of things within the high school system, within the college system, to really expose people to what career opportunities there are available at City Furniture. And we do all sorts of other things that are not necessarily even related to kind of the recruiting side, but we have a very strong promotion from within policy, and a lot of training that goes along with that. So we're just constantly focused on, our associates and what we can do to improve their experience. When it comes to educational things, for example, even we do a back to school fair. So every year, I remember having lunch with Robert Runcie one day, and I said, you know what, we donate a lot of back to school supplies, and we should give our associates backpacks, and we're asking our associates to bring supplies that they so desperately need. So every year, every August, usually the first Saturday in August, we actually give out 250 backpacks to our associates. They pre-register their kids. It's a big fair. We have mock museum discovery and science there. We have an ice cream truck. We have face painting. We get the kids excited about going back to school. But at the same time, they get to come to their mom and dad's work, and they get to see what City Furniture is all about. And we're starting to have second generation associates now, and so forth. So so many, I could talk all day about City Furniture and all the things we do, but from a variety of different aspects, but
Great.
Lots of cool stuff.
And then Mildred and Mason, then coming back to you both see and work with a lot of our employers and identify best practices to help them, things like, employee reimbursement plans for existing employees, for retention strategies, right? To help them continue to get more education and training so they can move up the ladder. Apprenticeship programs and internship programs. So talk, Mildred and then Mason, about what are the best practices that you see business and industry like City Furniture and our marine industry and others doing?
Well, I'll talk a little bit about tuition reimbursement or tuition assistance policies that companies have. It's a really great way for, especially in this low unemployment, for an employer to retain their existing employee base and to grow and keep elevating them so that they can grow and enhance. And we partner with employers to maximize that tuition assistance by helping those employees accelerate into their degree program, using their work experience towards credit that we can evaluate their work experience and award them credit towards their degree, so that we're helping them fast path onto their degree, using the employer's tuition assistance, looking to put training programs out in employers' environments so that those employees can access the next level training that they need, whether it's an industry certification or courses towards their degree that are common to that employer. So we've done some really interesting things when employers are open to growing their employees that they currently have so that they can retain them.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say as well. The best employers I think out there are those that embrace the idea of career ladders and career pathing, that they are looking at their entry-level employees and trying to plot a chart for them so that they can stay with the company if they have those soft skills and so forth, and all forms of work-based learning, whether it's incumbent worker training or already employed worker that you can advance in their career and then backfill with somebody else that's coming up. But those career paths have to be known, they have to be developed, and they have to be lubricated, meaning that the employer has to support some time on the job to get those extra skills so they can move them along their career trajectories.
All right, we're going to move into questions from the audience next, and Kelly, we've got microphones here. So Stephanie, I see your hand up. If you want to queue up back there, we'll start going to that. While people are queuing up, one of the questions I didn't get to here, but it'll probably come up, and I know you think about it, and I'll ask for a couple of quick 30-second answers to this, and then we can move on. But there's so much. I believe, Mason, I saw somewhere that 1 out of 12 jobs in America is related to transportation industry. Logistics and supply chain, truck drivers, all that we complain about traffic on our streets. Probably 2 or 3 cars that are around you are really trucks delivering products from Amazon and City Furniture and other places. And so when automated, or what do we call it? Driverless cars and trucks, which are already operating and the technology is there, when that happens, those 1 out of 12 jobs are going to be severely affected, and it's not that far down the road. So actually, I'll stop on that, but y'all can come back to that in a minute. Stephanie,
Hi, thank you to all of you for being here tonight. We talked about wages and housing and the Alice report, as President Armstrong mentioned, but we see year after year that healthcare costs keep increasing, and the percentage of the American workforce that belongs to a union or can collectively bargain has been continuously decreasing. So what is the role that employers can play related to healthcare, as well as the collective bargaining rights of employees? Because I think that that's statistically something we see when employees have right to collectively bargain, their wages are higher, they're much more likely to have healthcare, and being that healthcare is an increasing cost and part of one's budget, what, if anything, are you all doing to address those issues? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie's the aide, by the way, for those who haven't met her, for Senator Nan Rich, now Commissioner Nan Rich, and she also participated in a recent student village square that we had on guns in schools and those kind of issues. Thank you for the question. Who wants to take that one on?
Jim. Well, I can't necessarily speak to the collective bargaining part of that question. We don't deal with that at City Furniture. But I can speak to healthcare, and it is an issue for us, as well as I think, pretty much every other employer out there. Other than wages, it is our second largest line item in our general ledger. So it's a huge issue for us. We just had a 12% increase in our health insurance costs this year, and we had to pass on, obviously, some of that to our associates as well. Some of the things that we do to counteract that, in particular, I'm only speaking on behalf of City Furniture. We actually have an on-site employer clinic where our associates it's run by Holy Cross Hospital, and our associates, we own it. It's in Tamarack, and they can get free health care, nurse practitioner. So things related to urgent care, chronic condition management, disease management are really kind of the drivers for that, workers' compensation injuries as well. So we focus a lot on making sure that our associates have access to healthcare through our own on-site clinic. We also have a lot of wellness programs, and I guess I should use this opportunity to tout that just 2 weeks ago we received the #1 healthiest employer in South Florida from the South Florida Business Journal. So we do a lot, to your question, we do a lot to try to educate our associates and try to do things to help them, really manage chronic conditions and really long-term alleviate heart attacks and strokes and those types of things. So we try to do everything we can.
Great. Thank you. Mason, do you want to comment on that? The
Yeah,
importance of that for employers and employees looking for jobs. How important is those benefit issues, healthcare, pensions, whatever?
It's very important to the job seekers. And Mildred alluded to it just a minute ago, and that's supply and demand. So what happens, the great news about low unemployment or full employment is that employers are now in competition for talent, okay? And competition is going to drive a lot of things. It's going to drive up the wages. It's going to drive concern about health care. You may even see the return of collective bargaining a little bit as employees get impatient with the small increases that are happening. We are seeing wages go up, but not like we've seen after previous recessions, okay? It's still depressed as employers try to reduce that cost, okay? And like I said before, if they would see their talent base as an appreciating asset to invest in and not one to minimize the cost as a cost center, it would change a lot of perceptions out there. So I think you're going to see that happening more and more as manufacturing increases here, as we bring in more technology companies, as more entrepreneurs who start their businesses here, and we've got a growing entrepreneur base here. You're going to see that competition play itself out in a lot of ways.
Good point. Back to retail business, Walmart this past year increased its starting wage to $11 or something an hour. So there's a good example of competition for entry-level, non-skilled, in many cases, workers, right?
Right, exactly.
And so good for workers and good for employees. But yes, sir. Please introduce yourself quickly.
Hello, my name is Ed Lewis. I had a question. There was comments about how kids do not know some of the jobs that are at the basic level, the skills, hands-on kind of level. I was an architect for over 20 years, and then I started the architecture magnet program at Northeast High School, and it was about 20 years ago. And we got phased out. Well, let me say that while I was there, we had carpentry and we had auto mechanics. and they were eventually taken away. I understand just before I started, we had welding and we had AC mechanics. And I was told that all that money is now going to junior colleges and away from high schools. So there's an opportunity for young kids to get access to the knowledge of those kind of skills, but that's being taken away in Florida. Now, I had a friend who had a nephew come down from Ohio, and they had an auto mechanics class of which he excelled. And he came down here just to visit. A friend knew a friend down in one of the dock areas. He went down to visit, and they were going to hire him within a day. He went down just to talk to them. And I thought, we're missing something here. And one other thing, don't get all totally excited about the Broward school system. And because, I'll give you the one example, they eliminated my program. Now, I ran my program as if it was a true architectural program, but I also had landscaping, I taught landscaping, some construction skills, and I had people coming in from the real estate industry and the construction industry, and we took field trips constantly. So when we had projects, I got real projects from the city of Oakland Park, and anytime I need a job, I just went to Charlie and said, Charlie, I need a job. He'd tell me, we're thinking of working on this part, pick the one you want. I always pick the hardest one, and we run it like a real job. I mean, all the process that a normal landscape architect would go through, I went through. The same with the largest landscape and development company is on Broward County, just the Broward Street, just on EDSA. They're the largest landscape and development company in the world. We worked with them for 4 years.
Sir, you got a question?
I do. Don't get so excited because when Common Core came in, they eliminated my class because we didn't have an end of the year test. There were 7 programs like mine where an architect was teaching architecture to high school kids, and they got rid of it. And
your question?
The question is, don't get all that excited about the Broward school system, because in place of that and of the 3 technical schools, they came up with the end of year test that was developed in Arizona, where they build houses out of wood. And it was absolutely useless.
So, sir,
and the certificate you got,
3rd time, do you have a question? We're running out of time.
Well, you said somebody should do some work working with the Broward school system.
Okay,
Because the
thank you.
certificate they came up with
I think we
was
heard that question,
useless.
and we appreciate your comments. Yes, sir, next.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Hector Magnon. I represent ARC Broward and actually oversee ARC Educate, which is the education and training arm of ARC Broward. So thanks, Jackie, for the shout out a little earlier.
My pleasure. I have to look out for my twins.
So I'm just curious on your thoughts in general, or really what you do in your respective organizations with regard to the disabled community. And a lot of times it's a matter of being politically correct and saying the right things, but part of my role after students go through one of our programs, whether it's entry-level culinary arts or material handler, which are certificate programs we have at ARC Broward, oftentimes I'm assisting with the job placement services, and a lot of times my feedback is requested on a certain student, but then the issue we have with job placement is employers being willing to even just have the conversation about employing a person with a specific disability. Nowadays, I think the message about inclusion is a bit more trendy, for lack of a better phrase, but I'm just curious about your thoughts regarding that particular demographic.
Good point, both in industry and education as well.
So I actually recently joined the ARC Broward Advisory Committee. So this is a question I've been thinking a lot about recently. I've been, I think, 2 meetings there, and that was proposed on us, is how can we address that with our industry? And so it's getting employers to think, getting employers to understand, and educating them of the capabilities, the talents, and really what they can do as an asset. An idea I had is the idea of a mirror day, or take an ARC student to school day, or take an ARC student to work day, where let them mirror somebody for a day, let them employ. I mean, we have warehouses, we have lots of job opportunities that could be there, but the employer may be afraid because they don't understand. So by giving them a day or a week or a couple of days, a trial period to understand the capabilities and that it can work in their favor, I think that that will go a long way towards the way they look at it moving forward.
You know, one of the things that you have to do with employers and with job seekers is sell them their strengths, right? So if you hear from employers that loyalty and reliability and dependability are major problems, then you start saying, well, let's look at some heretofore unexplored demographics that maybe you've overlooked, like people with disabilities, because the studies show that they're more likely to go on a job, more likely to retain that job and not job hop, and they are reliable, they have good customer service skills and things like that. So we are an employment network. I know that you know what that means, but under the Social Security Disability Administration, we are designated as an employment network. I believe ARC is too. But for a workforce board employment network, we're the most successful in the country at placing people with disabilities in jobs. So there's a lot going on in this country.
Wonderful. I see at the mic my neighbor who lives in my same apartment complex and also a faculty member here with us. So I'm going to give her the honor of the last question and then some brief closing comments by our guests, because we'd like to keep you on time in our programs and we're rapidly running out of time.
Thank you. My name is Gail Choate, and there were a couple of things that you alluded to during your various comments, and I want to just thank you first of all for creating this forum, because I think it's really done a remarkable job at showing us this relationship between the skills gap and the needs of employment in our community. You alluded to the transportation issue and how oftentimes there's a disconnect between where potential employees live and where they need to go to work, and a lack of infrastructure for transportation. And we've also alluded to the issue of the requirements that are placed upon our students and our educational system. So I look at both of those and say, those are government issues on a state level as well as on a local level. So I'm curious if you could please address the intersection between this issue of matching skills with employment and mandates that are coming from the state legislature in terms of requirements such as Common Core, et cetera, and the lack of infrastructure that perhaps we have in order to support people who need jobs but aren't able to get to them. Thank you.
What a question. That's an essay question that will be on the final. Who wants to take a shot?
Well, I mean, they are related but separate kinds of issues. I mean, the great enablers of work are childcare and transportation. If you don't have those things, if you don't have those two things in place, people don't go to work.
And school, too.
And school, that's right. So you've got to have both of those, and we don't have a real good transportation system here. It's getting better, and there are plans to make it better, but we definitely need an employment-centered transportation system here that's convenient, easy for people to get to, and so forth. The issue of the mandates and so forth is slightly different, and that is that funding was cut for the K-12 system as it was for the community college, and yet more requirements were put on local boards. Believe me, they did not want to give up those programs, especially in what used to be called vocational training, career and technical education, but also in the arts. They didn't want to give those up either. I mean, look, those are important sources of those soft skills that we talked about. And yet they had to comply with state law and so forth. So before you damn the local school system, you have to look and see what the legislature did and what kind of funding they gave them, and gave the educational system to work with. We're still one of the lowest per capita allocations for K-12 of any state in the nation, and it's disgraceful.
Yeah, agreed. So let's give you each an opportunity for 30, 45 seconds, 1 minute max. What's the best hope for? I love focusing on what's working well, and let's put more resources behind that. There are going to be some chronic issues in almost every situation we deal with that are bigger, longer term issues. It doesn't mean we ought not pay attention to them, especially if they're issues of ethical and justice issues, et cetera. But what's working in your minds that we ought to keep putting a focus on, or any other closing comments? Janet, you want to start us?
Yeah, again, I was drinking.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
I'll focus my question, really primarily around city furniture. And I think what's working very well in particular are the relationships that we have. And I know there are lots of other employers that have these similar types of relationships with the educational system, whether that's, throughout the high school or whether it's at, with Broward College, whether it's with other universities across the state of Florida. And we just continue to focus on making those better and better and better, and the quality of students that we get is phenomenal. So we appreciate the nonprofits that we work with, like our Broward. My last shameless plug for them. So I think we just have to keep doing more and more of that. You can't run a business and not have those partners, not have those educational partners. We work very closely with CareerSource Broward. We're expanding to Orlando, and I have a meeting on Thursday with CareerSource Central Florida to talk to them about, how are they going to be able to help us? What can we do for them, and what can they do for us to help us, fill our needs in Orlando as well. So you just have to have all those partnerships. You have to work together, and there's hope.
Yes, there is. And Mason, you talk about this a lot. Broward County is very blessed to have leadership in all sectors, not-for-profit, governmental, education, business and industry, who work together and collaborate. And it's one of the reasons we have one of the lowest unemployment, maybe the lowest unemployment rate in Florida, I think. What do you see that causes all that to happen?
Well, we've always been very collaborative here. Going back to the time when I first got here, we have a coordinating council of Broward. We have various venues like the Broward Workshop and the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, where, in any community, 10% of the people are 90% of the board. So we all get together and we try to come up with solutions to these nagging problems that we see. And we might fight, but we fight like family, not like enemies, and try to get the job done. So. But going back to the promising things, I think a continued awareness that there's more than one path to the American dream, and that's these middle-skilled jobs, these opportunity jobs, is a healthy thing for this community to embrace, whether you're a parent or you're an employer or you're an influencer. I think that one of the things we overlooked, we didn't talk about, was entrepreneurship, and I noticed that the Broward County School System is now creating a school of entrepreneurship in one of their high schools. The studies show that in a very short period of time, we're going to be a nation of free agents, that people are going to be working for themselves rather than for a company. And so we need when we talk about being a plumber, it isn't just about being a plumber, it's about owning the plumbing company. If you're talking about an air conditioning mechanic, it isn't about being the mechanic, it's about owning the air conditioning company and maybe 2 or 3. So I think that that's something we need to not overlook.
Great. Sean, you've already given us great hope in light of what one individual and one industry can do. Anything else you want to say about that?
Yeah, to Mason's point, getting the awareness out there. I think just keep making everybody aware of the opportunities that are out there. President Armstrong used the phrase disruption. I love the disruptors in every industry. I mean, the disruption leads to better customer service. I can get a good delivered to my house overnight without ever leaving my couch. I mean, it's increased everything. And so, everybody pay attention to what's going on. Don't be afraid to be a disruptor. And I'll leave you with something my mentor told me. Pay it forward. Mentor those around you. Take a young person under your wing and help those find their place. Not everybody thinks the same way you do. Be aware. And we all have the same goal at the end of the day. To use that industry pun, rising tide raises all ships.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mildred?
Well, I think it's, again, about really busting those myths about what's out there in the workforce for our students and where they can go and connect to the world of work. We know that 1/3 of employers are looking for employees with an entrepreneurial mindset, just like Mason said. So we have to make sure that we're imparting those things within our education system and helping students to understand that they can be a job creator, not just a consumer of jobs, and making sure that there's all those opportunities along the way. I think in a low unemployment rate, we have to really continue to successfully educate and continue to train the existing workforce, but we have thousands of people that are out in our communities, our adult learners that may have some college but need to get reconnected back to a new skill to elevate them, to upskill them, get them to the next level of education and training. And I think that's an opportunity that we have to continue to do what we do well at Broward College, which is focus on that adult learner.
Great. Thank you all. Kelly, you're going to come up and close us out, and as she's coming up, please join me in thanking our panelists for their great words of wisdom. And we want to thank all of you for coming out tonight. We're only about 1 minute over, and Kelly's going to close in 1 more minute, I think.
So again, on behalf of Broward College, thank you so much for attending this evening. A big shout out to our panelists and a special shout out to Sean, who I literally had to call at 3:30 today to tell him that my other panelist, thank you, was unfortunately sick. So we have a little gift for you guys. For those of you who are interested in this type of programming, we alluded to at the very beginning that our February dinner on a free market for education has been rescheduled. So save the date for May the 2nd at the Funky Buddha. All of the panelists and the moderators have stayed the same. So we have Superintendent Runcie. We were able to secure Joy Frank, who's the General Counsel and Legislative Liaison for the Florida Association of District School Superintendents. Bill Maddox, Director of the J. Stanley Marshall Center for Education Options at the James Madison Institute. Carrie Ann Royce, who's a education blogger and parent. And then, of course, Superintendent Runcie. And then our last dinner is going to be, pardon me, I just saw the Takeout Tuesdays on there. So we have The Right to Die coming on April the 17th. Again, in this room, free and open to the public. And then the last dinner for the Village Square is going to be something on the topic of the Parkland incident. We, I think, are trying to get together all of these students who have shown this country what collaboration can do and how it can ultimately change politics. So that it'll be something to the effect of does your voice count. So sign up. You can always learn more on the website. Thank you so much for coming and have a wonderful evening.